This is the Roborock S6 MaxV Ultra. It is an upgraded S6 with object detection and some other improvements. There's a lot of talk about the upcoming S7 Max, but I think that the S6 Max will stay relevant because it's going to be about half the price of the upcoming flagship. So unless you use those specific new features, then the S6 would probably still be a good option for you. I've had quite a few robots at my house lately, but I've actually been choosing to use the S6 Max still because it hasn't been getting stuck with absolutely no house prep at all, although that may not always be the case. While I'm not particularly messy, I haven't picked up a single cable or sock or anything specifically for the robot, and I've just started to clean while I'm out, and I haven't returned home to a stuck robot once. That won't always be the case though, because as you'll see in our tests later on, it doesn't always detect things. I may have just got lucky, or maybe my house is particularly easy. There are a couple of key differences between the S7 and the S6 Max. The S7 raises its mop 5 mils when it detects that it's approaching carpet, whereas on this, the mop is at a fixed height, so you'd have to remove the mop and do a separate clean on carpet. The S7 also is compatible with an auto empty dock, which this is not. However, the S6 Max has this object detection, which means that it detects objects on the ground below the height of the main LiDAR. It'll also send you recommendations based on what it's seen in a cleaning run of things on the ground that you can improve and pick up so that it won't get stuck next time. It has 20% more suction than the S6 Pure, the same 2,500 pascals as the S7. It also seems to have that same floating roller brush head, which sits down close to the floor and forms a bit of a seal on the ground. This means that it does really well at deep cleaning and carpet, although if there are larger objects, it does tend to push them around a little bit, as you'll see in the test later on. This may still be the best navigating robot on the market. It uses its LiDAR and it creates a house map, which is accurate up to about 2 centimeters, Roborock say. You can then edit that map. You can add virtual barriers or no-go zones, which the robot won't cross. It can also schedule it to clean specific rooms at specific times of the day, so you can make it work into your own personal schedule. It's really hard to compare object detection skills on different robots because they often seem to have no issues with things in real life that they'd struggle with in the tests. Therefore, you may not even know if it's touched something in real life. All I can say is it didn't get stuck for me a single time, which is very impressive. It is smart home connected and it is compatible with Google Home and Amazon Alexa, and you can use a bridging app to connect it to Apple HomeKit. It is also a hybrid, which means that it can mop at the same time as vacuuming. The mop is a separate attachment, and when it is fitted, the robot will vacuum and mop continuously. The S6 range does not detect carpet, so you will have to set up no mop zones within the app unless you want it to mop on the carpet, which you don't. If you have hard floors separated by carpet, you will have to carry the robot between areas to continue mopping. The water tank on the MaxV is almost double of the S6 Pure, up to 300 mils. It is also electronically controlled on the flow rate, which means that you can set a different flow rate for different parts of the home depending on how heavy the traffic is. The mopping pad is not ultrasonic either, which means that it is just dragging around in a static position, unlike on the new S7. However, because the S6 is so heavy, we find that it actually does an incredibly good job and isn't actually too much worse. The S6 Max is only available in black, which I think looks particularly cool, and these little red Roborock details look awesome. As always, it has drop sensors, which will stop it from falling down any stairs or any fall that may hurt it. It also has a rubber and bristled combination brush, which means that it's really good at picking up fur and long hair, although a little bit more will get tangled than on the straight rubber brush of the S7. It has a rubber side brush which doesn't get matted with liquid when it's mopping or spread it around the floor, but it does sound a little bit funny at times. It has a 460mm dustbin, which is enough for a pretty big house. If you don't have any pets, you may get 1 or 2 or 3 cleans out of it even. It has a 5,200 mAh battery, which is the same lithium-ion battery as on the S6 Pure and S7. Roborock state on their website that it cleans up to 300 meters squared, although it will have to return to base, recharge, and then it will resume where it left off. And if you have 300 meters squared, you'll probably have to do this a couple of times. It is the same Roborock app for the S6 Max that we know and love. As we enter the app, you see that we have a floor plan here, which is of our office. Over here in the corner, you see that we have that little testing station that you see in our tests. And you can see that it is just cleaned there, and you can see the grid pattern that it did. If you had done a full office clean, you would see that reflected here. It's all pretty straightforward to use. Obviously, we can start a clean by clicking the clean button, or we can send it home to dock. We also have options down here for the vacuum power options and also for the water flow rate. We also have the options to clean specific rooms and then clean it once or twice if we want to. Or we can just send it to a specific zone just by highlighting the area and clicking clean. We have the object recognition settings, which we can obviously turn off if we wanted to. Otherwise, we can let it know that we have pets, which will increase its sensitivity so it will stay away from them. You can also send notifications to your app where it takes photos of any obstacles that it sees that it recommends you remove for the next cleaning run. We can also turn on or off the remote viewing option, which we'll show you later, or you can manage the maps. Under the robot settings, we can change the robot's name, we can turn off the lights if we want to, or we can turn off the carpet boost. This means that when the robot detects that it's on carpet, it will automatically move the robot suction to maximum. Under schedules, we can set up a schedule. We start it at a specific time. And then we choose whether to repeat it every day, weekdays, or we can set up a custom cleaning pattern. As I mentioned earlier, the robot will automatically recognize which level it's on, or you can set it manually here. Under the maintenance section, the robot will tell us how much life it's got in each of its consumable parts, like the filter, the side brush, or the main brush. And we can keep the robot up to date in the firmware update section. As you can see, it's up to date, which is good. Roborock are pretty good with pushing updates reasonably regularly, and they continue doing so for quite a while. And of course, we can share the device to other people in the household so that they can also control and set up their own schedules. Under the map settings, we can see that we can add no-go zones, we can edit the rooms or cut them up into smaller sections if we wish to, or we can customize the cleaning sequence. If we had a pile of cables or something that we wanted to avoid for whatever reason, we could put one of these no virtual barriers around it. The invisible walls are also really useful if you have any ranch sliders that you leave open in summer, or if you just have any particularly tricky little pieces that you want the robot to avoid. As I mentioned earlier, the S6 Max will continue to try and mop on carpet, so you will want to set up no mop zones. This is pretty easy to do. You just select a no mop zone, you identify the area with the carpet, you circle around that area and the robot won't go in that when it detects that the mop is attached. Otherwise, if you remove the mop, it will know to go and continue cleaning there. We also have a live view mode, which means we can see in real time what the camera on board is seeing. By default, it is turned off and is also hidden behind a password screen. This means that you can connect to your robot through the Wi-Fi and you can drive it around and look and see what's happening at home from anywhere in the world. You can also record voice messages which will be said through the robot speaker. On the map, you can also just select a spot and then click go so you don't have to go through the rigmarole of driving it. The roller brush on the MaxV sits very low to the ground and forms a bit of a seal, and it also has 20% more suction than the base Roborock S6 model, so it was really impressive on our seed test. It got almost all of the seeds on the first pass, and the side brush is noticeably quite well configured as it was sweeping them into the vacuum rather than wildly flicking them around. We weighed what it picked up, and it picked up all 40 grams of the seeds. The same lower roller brush meant it wasn't quite as good on the Fruit Loops. They're slightly too big and tend to get pushed around and then crunched into the dustbin. This is really unlikely to affect real-life performance, and the ceiling effect far outweighs the small negative. It still got 17 of the 20 grams of the Fruit Loops. It did well at picking up hair, however it did get a lot tangled around the brush as we expected. It is pretty easy to clean though, and it only needs to be done every couple of weeks or so depending on your home. The object recognition detected the dog bowl and it avoided it successfully, but it did run over the cable. It didn't get stuck and it was able to free itself, but it does show that it's not 100% reliable. Because it was cleaning when I wasn't home most of the time, I'm not sure if this is what it was doing when I wasn't there, but it didn't get stuck at all, which is what really matters. On the hard floor, it did better on the Fruit Loops due to the extra clearance, getting almost all of them on the first pass. It picked up all 20 grams of the Fruit Loops on the hard floor. The mopping is definitely the best hybrid we've ever tested with a static mopping pad. It left a slightly sticky residue from the syrup, but it looked very clean even after only one pass. I assume it's so much better than a normal drag around mop because it's very solid and it weighs a lot more than an average robot vacuum. It did alright on the coffee powder, but it did take 2 passes and left some tracks in the powdery residue. If you're trying to decide between this and the S7, then there are a few things to consider. The S6 Max is not compatible with the auto empty dock, as we've already mentioned, nor does it have the 5mm mop raise. Even compared with the S7, the S6 Max is still a really good option, particularly if you're not too worried about the auto empty dock or the mop raise feature. Roborock's build quality is really good, it feels super solid, and also the firmware stability is excellent. The object detection means that it's particularly good for parents that have kids that leave stuff around, or for people that are more focused on vacuuming and don't want to mop every single clean. As always, please ask any questions or leave any feedback in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe as the S7 MaxV Ultra video that is much awaited is coming out soon.